This is Gridiron Graduates, a weekly podcast covering all things football. Episode number 21, and then there were 5. Recorded October 21st, 2015.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Gridiron Graduates. Hope you all had a great week as usual. I am the semi-professor Bill Rossetti, joined by the guru of football, of course, Mr. Ian Wharton. Ian, what is going on, my man?
Not much. As we just wrapped up talking on Miami Pod this week, which if you're into the Dolphins, you'll definitely want to check out. And even this week, if not, if you just want to check us out again, you certainly should. But I am getting ready to watch 2 of the best quarterbacks in the college country, UCLA's Josh Rosen and Cal's Jared Goff. So I'm definitely doing well. Of course, by the time you're listening to this at home, this game is probably going to be decided. but and obviously we'll see how these 2 young studs do. But yeah, my friend, I'm doing very well.
Yeah, it's weird. Like Ian just mentioned, we actually recorded the Miami Pod. I was actually fortunate enough to be a guest on his show. So, thanks again, Ian, for letting me on. Made it quite interesting, I'm so used to hosting the show here and introducing Ian. This time the roles were kind of reversed, so it was fun. But yeah, we're back at it. It's week 7 already of the NFL season, and the New York Mets are in the World Series.
It's crazy. I was pulling for Chicago just because I push for kind of teams that have had a long losing streak, long losing history, and I know that the Mets kind of apply to that. So I will be rooting for the Mets and the Blue Jays to face off in the World Series. If both make it, I'll be pretty happy with either one. But yeah, man, I was a little disappointed just because Chicago obviously is one of the ultimate underdogs in sports in general.
Mm-hmm. And I'll mention this again. Some of you may remember I've mentioned I'm from Joe Madden's hometown. But I'll be honest though, I haven't really heard much of a reaction yet. I didn't get a chance to see the local news or anything, so I'm not sure how the overall feeling is right now that Joe Madden is out of the World Series. And the ironic thing too is that the Cubs were swept out of the playoffs on the same day that Back to the Future predicted them to sweep the World Series. So, oh well. Sorry Cubs fans. Maybe next year for the 108th time, I believe this will be now.
Good news for them is at least they have a super young team, and
yeah.
Hopefully, that's not a guarantee for anything. We've seen that with a lot of different teams. I think of instantly the Thunder, the Oklahoma City Thunder in basketball. Everyone thought, this is the start of a dynasty, and it's not really been a team.
They were my pick last year to go to the finals, I think.
Yeah, and obviously injuries.
No, they missed the playoffs last year. That's right.
They did, yeah, because of injuries. But I think they'll be a pretty strong team this year. But yeah, it's hopefully the future is bright for them. Again, I'm a Cleveland Indians fan, but so I've endured my struggles as well. But if the Indians don't win it, I do hope it's a non-familiar face. I don't like the same teams winning all over and over and over again. And that's not any fun.
And that was the nice thing about this year's playoffs. It's not your big market, big name cities or big name teams that are in the Final Four. By the way, nice contract for your boy Tristan Thompson.
Yeah, so for people that don't know, I did intern with the Cavs for a year. I'm a huge Tristan Thompson fan. I know he's a limited player. I know he's maybe not worth all that money, but he's a guy that he was always first one in, last one out. This was a guy that every single time there was a game, he was in the gym, he was shooting baskets, he was working on post-up moves, he was working on defense. He's a guy that busted his butt more than anyone else on that team. And so, I root for him. I'm really happy for him that he got paid. There's really no more deserving player in the league. And, I'm just really happy to see him succeed and be a part of this franchise for a long time. Like I said, I like guys like him, and I hope he continues to succeed.
Yeah, and I was a fan of Thompson too, especially coming out of Texas. He was definitely one of the better players in college. By the way, I can't wait for college hoops to get underway. I also love too how baseball, like during the baseball playoffs yesterday, they're already promoting March Madness on TBS. I was like, nice.
Yeah, it's
Let's
almost
go.
that time of year for college basketball. It's crazy how that sneaks up on you so quickly. I
It
feel like.
does. And it makes sense too because the championship game is on TBS this year. For all my college hoops fans out there that may not have known that, make note of that. TBS, not CBS this year, has the national championship game from Houston. And hopefully soon I'll be getting my preseason bracket out. And by the way, those are fun, but a bit of a pain to create only because obviously we don't know what the hell the teams are going to look like. But we'll see. By the way, North Carolina #1, so that makes me happy. Well, tied for #1, but they got more first place votes at Kentucky. So, but in any event, let's get to the sport that you all actually listen to hear us talk about. I mean, we are the Gridiron graduates for a reason, but it's fun to talk other sports for sure. But yeah, let's talk about. Let's talk about 5 teams, specifically the 5 undefeated teams still standing 6 weeks into the season, which is pretty amazing, this late in the season, and we have this number of teams still undefeated. And so we'll kind of talk about them one by one and just kind of discuss what's been going on with them, how they got to this point, and where we potentially see them going forward. It will start with the Patriots. For most people, they are the best team in football right now. They've really taken on that us against the world mentality. Obviously coming off the Deflategate and what Tom Brady's gone through. This offense is obviously just outstanding. Brady is still in high gear. The running game is still very good. LeGarrette Blount is getting back in it. Dion Lewis, really good to see him finally getting going. Being able to stay healthy, and because we knew he had talent. He just either through injuries or just being buried on the depth chart or whatever the case may be, he was never able to showcase that talent. Now that he's in New England, now that he had that clear path, he's taken full advantage of it, and I'm very excited for him. And obviously the receivers are still playing well. Defense has been playing pretty decently as well, even without Darrelle Revis. The corners, haven't been terrible, but so overall, not too shabby for the Patriots, I guess.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those teams, man. You can't kill them off. This team is impossible to kill off. You think that okay, they're losing Darrelle Revis, they're losing even Brandon Browner. I mean, Browner wasn't great, but he was a good fit for New England.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really go out and get anybody to fill their shoes. Didn't even really try. I mean, they just brought in a bunch of journeymen. Yeah, so it's really interesting because, as you mentioned, the secondary. I want to just keep on them for a second. The Malcolm Butler train. He's been a decent player for them, but it's really interesting because they actually shadow receivers with him, which you can only say that for 2 or 3 guys across the NFL. And it's just kind of strange to me because he's not good enough to really do that. But I mean, that's kind of a testament to really how much better he is compared to the rest of their secondary. And that's one thing that I think could come back to haunt them come playoff time, is that lack of secondary talent. But I agree with you on this team. I mean, this is a team that's going to be really tough to stop. Between their explosive offense, their powerful running game, their great coaching, the front seven of their defense is so good. It's not, elite, but it's still pretty good. They haven't played amazingly, but it's still a very effective group. And you have to think too, like when you're looking at statistics against this team is putting up a lot of points. So there's going to be times in the game where they give up a lot of yards and points because their defense is going to be on the field, and other teams are going to be at their most aggressive stage for large chunks of the game. And so that's going to change things, especially after the game is over, or basically decided, I should say. A second half, this team's kind of pulled away, and other offenses are, it's hard to maintain that close game mentality, that same level of intensity when you're up by 2 or 3 touchdowns. So, I look at this team. I think they're better than some of the stats may say. I think this is a really good team, man. Like, it's hard to not say that this is the best team in the AFC.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like super. Ugh. I feel like I know what I want to say. I just don't want to spit up. Yeah, New England's definitely. Yeah, tips for podcast. Try to get your words straight and then don't do what I'm doing basically right now. I'm a testament to the blunders of podcasting and the evils that lie within. But yeah, New England's definitely the top team in the AFC. But there's a team sitting out there in the kind of Midwest that, they're obviously not on New England's level, but they're creeping up there a little bit and could be a sneaky dark horse contender in the AFC. But we'll get to them in a little bit. Let's flip over to the NFC and talk about the Green Bay Packers. A team that, may not have been left for dead after losing Jordy Nelson, but certainly the talk was, can guys like Ty Montgomery and Jeff Janis step up and replace Jordy Nelson or replace the production that was left? Well, they have a little bit, but certainly the big guy that's been filling the shoes is James Jones, of all people. And all the talk, of course, was, oh, by the way, the Giants cut James Jones. Hey, did you hear the Giants cut James Jones? Well, if you talk to some Giants guys, one in particular I always see mentioned is Dan Graziano of ESPN. They were looking for more of a slot-type receiver, not necessarily what James Jones was bringing to the table. So that's the reason Jones got cut from New York. And of course, he wasn't exactly the best fit as the quote-unquote top guy when he was in Oakland. But now that he's back in a system like Green Bay where he doesn't have to be the guy, and he obviously has the best quarterback throwing to him, he's obviously been producing a lot more. It's almost like he never left Green Bay. He still is clicking there. But certainly Janis has played good. Montgomery has stepped up. Richard Rodgers has stepped up. The running game's been interesting, though, because Eddie Lacy hasn't exactly been the top-notch player that we expected him to be. James Starks has, kind of come on a little bit and had to pick up some of the slack. But this defense, too, has just been playing outstanding, especially in the secondary. We've talked before about guys like Sam Shields. Like I know you said he's been playing better. Demarius Randall, the rookie, making some big plays. In fact, I think he had the big play. He had the 4th down stop, I think, against San Diego. So it's just, a total team effort for this Packers team. Really the whole reason why they're 6-0. And obviously the clear-cut favorites in the NFC right now.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Even after considering like the last 2 weeks, I think we've seen defenses adjust a little bit to this team not having Jordy, to not having Eddie Lacy. I think that we're starting to see this offense struggle a little bit, which shouldn't be a shocker. I mean, just think about this for a second. Green Bay's without their top running back. They're without their 2 top receivers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was kind of inevitable that this team would. I mean, they're still playing well, but they're just not playing as well as, we kind of saw beginning of the season or last season when like this peak offense, but they're playing. I think they're playing this the right way. They're gonna get Eddie Lacy healthy into his best possible shape. You know, he was in a walking boot before the last game. You know, it's time. It's the right time of the season to rest these guys, to get Devontae Adams 100%. Enter the playoffs at your peak performance. Don't worry about week 6 playing the best football of the season, because that'll get you into trouble.
Yeah.
So I like what they're doing. I like that they're giving James Starks a little bit of the workload. Obviously, he's good enough for a week or two to carry that and really do a lot of damage. He's capable of doing that behind that offensive line. So I mean, you know, I think that it's kind of interesting in terms of, you know, if we're going to say, okay, is this going to be the best team out of the NFC, or is this going to be the last undefeated team standing? I don't know. I don't know, because I think that the schedules align very closely for some of these undefeated teams to lose in the next couple weeks. There's a lot of really, really good teams playing each other here in the next like 3 or 4 weeks. But I think that this is, for me right now, the best team in the NFL. If I'm playing with house money, you know, that would be my bet. And part of that is just because what Aaron Rodgers is, and also that secondary. That Green Bay secondary has played really well. Sam Shields, Casey Hayward, rookie Demarius Randall, which, by the way, I mean, Demarius Randall, I just want to touch on him for a second. So he was a safety and a slot cornerback for Arizona State last year. I had him as a 3rd-round pick. And this is kind of where sometimes scouting college guys, we're just too limited with what we have available. We never had their outside cornerback film really available. I mean, because we don't have all 22 angles. And so when Randall was playing outside cornerback before his junior season, we didn't really know what he was, who he was. He was an unknown. And clearly the tape must have shown that he was a good cornerback out there. And we just never saw that. I mean, clearly from what we've seen of him as an NFL player, if we were doing a redraft, I think he's probably going top 15, top 20 picks. He's looked really, really good. And they haven't played him full time, but they played him quite a bit. I think that he's a guy, stock up, and he and the rest of that secondary, Clay Matthews is playing well. The defensive line has been playing okay. You know, it's still not a good run defending unit, but it's a decent enough unit. You know, I'm definitely buying this team as not only a Super Bowl contender, but a favorite, and probably my favorite team in the NFL right now as far as week in and week out and Super Bowl prediction.
Which certainly helps my case of my preseason pick of the Packers winning the Super Bowl. So, but the other side of my pick isn't exactly the hottest. Thanks, Indy. And if you guys are still listening, thanks, and I apologize for my tongue twisters earlier in the show. So thanks for sticking with us. But yeah, obviously, you know, like you said, the Packers just outstanding so far, and you know, really looking forward to seeing how they continue on, and hopefully Eddie Lacy can get things going. And you know, like you said, they have some tough games coming up. Their next 2 opponents are actually current undefeated teams right now. They have their bye this week, then they're at Denver on a Sunday night, and then at Carolina the week after. So they've got some interesting matchups coming up. So we'll see if they can get out of them unscathed, or if they suffer their first loss in the next 2 weeks. Let's jump back to the AFC. We mentioned that dark horse contender. You know, believe it or not, the Cincinnati Bengals at this point in the season are certainly a contender to win the AFC and potentially, I'm not saying they will, but there's always a possibility they can upset the Patriots. But boy, Andy Dalton has just been playing outstanding through these first 6 weeks, and this has definitely been one of the better offenses in the NFL. And not just because of AJ Green. They're getting production elsewhere. They're getting production from guys like Marvin Jones, Mohamed Sanu. Tyler Eifert has just been outstanding this season with tight ends. And we've mentioned before the running game. Gio Bernard really stepping up, especially with Jeremy Hill. Not exactly playing the best, or certainly not as well as he played last year, but real nice to see Gio Bernard get back involved in this offense. And I know you've mentioned before you're a huge Hugh Jackson fan, and definitely a lot of credit to him for getting the Bengals in this position. And then on defense, playing well. Geno Atkins getting back to his old self, which is real nice to see. Pass rush isn't too bad. Carlos Dunlap has played pretty well. So, but overall, this is still a very good Bengals team that, could certainly be in contention when we get to the postseason. Now, obviously, the big question is, can Andy Dalton keep it up? Because history tells us that bad Andy is going to rear his ugly head at some point during the season. And if the Bengals do make it to the playoffs, will bad Andy show up there again? Or can the Bengals finally get over the hump and actually win a playoff game? That's the main issue right now with this Bengals team.
Yeah, I mean, I do worry a little bit about the secondary on the Bengals. You've got Reggie Nelson, who's old, who's aging and showing it. You've got Leon Hall, who's aging and showing it. But Michael Johnson, I kind of took that signing for granted, but he's been a good player for them. Geno Atkins is obviously tremendous on defense, and he's been the creative rusher that he once was. And so that's a huge boost for this defense. Of course, the linebacker positions have been pretty good overall for them, and that was a weakness in 2014. So whether it be health, whatever it may be, that has been a unit that is that I'm looking at and saying, okay, that's been a position of change. Better pass rushers, better linebackers. Even though the secondary is not quite as strong and Drake Kirkpatrick is still kind of a question mark, I'm still kind of buying this defense. I was a little shaky entering the year, but I'm buying them right now. Offensively, I could go on for days. I love Hugh Jackson. I think that Jackson's just a tremendous coach. I think he was wronged in Oakland, and I think that what he's doing now for this offense, I mean, look at the talent that he's helped develop. Now, part of it's good drafting. Part of it's definitely good drafting. You can't have one without the other. When you draft talent, they've got to have talent there to be unlocked and maximized. But they've done a great job of that. Tyler Eifert, now that he's a couple years in, he's really found his own. He is an impact tight end. He may be the second best tight end in the NFL right now. I would look at AJ Green, who's healthy. We know he's amazing. That's not necessarily coaching. He's just an amazing playmaker. I'm really glad that he is healthy and at his best right now. Mohamed Sanu, Marvin Jones, Gio Bernard, playing higher level right now than anyone else. Or let me say, any other time in their career. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So big things going really well right now for this offense. I'm definitely buying this team. You mentioned Andy Dalton, and I think you're right, man. Like I'm still waiting for him to have that stinker game. I don't trust him fully, and but maybe that's not fair. I thought he peaked last year. I thought, this is a guy. He is who he is at this point. He's just not going to get better, but he's playing more efficiently. His playmakers have improved, and maybe that'll be enough. Maybe it'll simply be enough that he doesn't have to really get better. He just has to find those great playmakers. I mean, sometimes that's just how the game works. And I'm not saying that to disparage Dalton. Maybe he has gotten better. When I watch him, I do think he's a little bit more efficient, but I will also say that the passing windows are a little bit more open with Eifert playing so well and with AJ Green back to 100%. So, whether it's tomato, we're not going to just blame it all on the quarterback. We're not going to give all the credit to the quarterback here on this show. But, it's definitely going to be something to watch moving forward because I'm not going to buy and I'm not going to sell on Dalton being better than what he was last year. I think that it's very possible. And that's going to be a real handful of a team to handle because you go top to bottom roster in the NFL, this might be the best one in the NFL.
And it'll certainly be interesting in the next few weeks. We always mention how Andy Dalton seems to crumble a little bit when he's in prime time and, when all eyes are on him. Well, they've got 2 primetime games coming up in the next few weeks. They have a bye this week, then an afternoon game at Pittsburgh, then a Thursday game against the Browns, and a Monday night game against the Texans. If I'm not mistaken, didn't the Browns upset the Bengals on a Thursday night last year?
I think so, yeah. They did. Yeah, you're right, they did, yeah.
So it'll be quite interesting to see how Dalton fares in those 2 games, if he can finally rid himself of those demons. And then he's got 2 more primetime games coming up late in the season, including a Monday night game at Denver in Week 16. And who knows, that game could very well be for first down bye. With, those 2 teams clearly the top dogs in their division, and at this point the AFC South champion could be ticketed for the 4 seed. So that Broncos-Bengals game late in the season, there could be a little bit on the line there. But obviously that's a ways away. And we'll move on now and talk about the last 2 teams that are still undefeated. And to me, these 2 teams are a bit of a coin flip. It just feels similar in the way that, both teams have good defenses, but both have struggled on offense for one reason or another. But in terms of ranking them, like say 4 and 5, I'd probably give the slight edge to the Broncos, but you could certainly make a case to put the Panthers at number 4 as well. Again, if you're sitting there ranking these 5 teams 1 through 5, I just feel like the Broncos have been playing better on better on defense. With guys like Aqib Talib and Chris Harris at corner, DeMarcus Ware playing outstanding at linebacker. And then on offense, you saw the running game start to pick up a little bit, but not from the guy we expected. C.J. Anderson's still disappointing a bit. Ronnie Hillman actually had a really good game. Now, granted, it was against the Browns, and the Browns' run D still isn't all that great, but it was still nice to see Ronnie Hillman have as good of a game as he did. But obviously, when it comes to the Broncos, all eyes are still on number 18, and as tough as it is to say, his arm is not good, and he is clearly reaching the end, unfortunately, which is tough because, this is a guy that we grew up watching, and, we at least have the honor of saying we've witnessed one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history in Peyton Manning. But Father Time has really kicked him in the butt this last year plus. But, yeah, for me, that's just kind of how I feel with the Broncos. They're obviously the class of their division right now because, Oakland's been okay, but I think they're still not ready to take that next step forward and contend in the division. San Diego's been kind of so-so, and Kansas City obviously has been a huge disappointment since week 1.
Yeah, I think I'm with you here on Denver. I think I'd put them ahead of Carolina. Just because that defense is so good, and it's been years in the making. They've had some really nice players on that defense, but now it's a great unit. The defensive line is just ferocious, along with those linebackers. They legitimately have, because Shaquille Barrett is just phenomenal. Like what he's been able to develop into. And props for him. He was a really fun guy in college because he's a really good athlete, and he was just winning with that athleticism. But now he's become a really good football player because DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller. Clearly, I think that those guys have had an effect on him. And now all of a sudden, Shane Ray, their first round pick in 2015, is their 4th best rusher. Like that's incredible to say.
And that's what they traded up for.
Yeah, and like I'm not even a huge Shane Ray fan. I had him as like a mid-round pick because I think he's a decent pass rushing specialist.
Yeah, he was definitely another one of those polarizing figures in the draft.
Yeah, but he's in a good spot though. Like Denver's a perfect spot for him, I think. I think he'll have nice success there. So, but it's interesting because he doesn't even play, which is crazy. He might start for some teams in the NFL. So, I think this defense is just fantastic. I love their secondary so much. I think they have the best trio of cornerbacks in the NFL, and I don't think it's especially close. Bradley Roby has been phenomenal as their third cornerback. Chris Harris, and then obviously Aqib Talib. So, I mean, this is a team they're very talented. They're deep all over. Offensively, they've got tremendous playmakers. You have to worry a little bit about running back. I don't know what's going on with C.J. Anderson, as you mentioned. Ronnie Hillman's probably been a little bit better this year, which is, it sucks for fantasy owners, but, in terms of real life football, at least they've got someone that can do a little bit. But it's a big concern because it's clear that running game was all predicated about Peyton Manning's presence. And I mean, I'm with you here. I don't think that's a good team. I don't think I don't think that's a good offensive unit because, we're really struggling. I don't know about you, but I'm struggling to come to grips that this is Peyton Manning now. Like, I mean, I believe it because I saw it last year.
Yeah.
But I mean,
it's just still surreal. It's like,
yeah,
it's like Derek Jeter not playing for the Yankees anymore. It's just something we're so accustomed to seeing, like how good he was, and to see him crumble and so fast too. Like we've mentioned off the show, how quickly this downturn came for Peyton Manning. He started his Denver career so good, and now all of a sudden he's completely veered off course, and I don't think there's any way for him to get back on.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I mean, I think it's just too much physical limitations, and I don't think it's a mental thing. I don't think it's anything that he's going to be able to fix ever. Like it would just be very surprising to me if they could ever somehow figure out a way to compensate for it. It's too severe of a limitation. But they're a dangerous team because of that defense. But the fact remains is that their defense is almost scoring as much as their offense. So, I mean, that's not going to continue. At some point, it's not going to continue. So, we'll see on them. It's hard to sit there and say that I'm not going to buy a 6-0 team, but I'm not. I mean, I don't think this is a team that's really a great threat to make the Super Bowl unless if an injury happens in either Cincinnati or New England.
Yeah. I mean, the way they're playing offense right now, that's not going to win you playoff games. As good as their defense is, the offense is going to have to score points. And when they go up against a good team like the Bengals, or even if they go up against, say, the Steelers or the Jets or the Dolphins or whoever, one of these other teams that have good defenses or good offenses, Denver may struggle to keep up. So it could be another early disappointing exit for this Broncos team. And not saying this is going to happen, but the Broncos are infamous a few years ago for starting 6-0 and missing the playoffs. Like I said, I don't think it's going to happen because I don't see anybody else in that division turning things around quickly enough to potentially catch the Broncos and overtake them for the division. But I'm just throwing that stat out there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's definitely something to keep in mind. And that brings us to our last undefeated team, the Carolina Panthers. They've faced a very easy schedule so far. I mean, I know that they beat Seattle, but Seattle's not the old Seattle that we're used to. I hesitate with this team. I know Cam Newton's playing the best football of his life. I'm a big Cam Newton fan. But I just come back to the fact that this is a team winning in a very specific way. They have to run the ball. to open everything up. And the run game has been good enough, but it hasn't been great. I mean, Cam Newton's basically their best running threat.
Yeah.
And, they deserve a lot of credit for maximizing a limited amount of talent around Cam Newton. They've tried to invest around him a little bit. Greg Olson's a good tight end. They drafted Devin Funchess, who's a long-term investment. Kelvin Benjamin, obviously, injured for the season. So, I mean, they've put some pieces around him. And is it enough? No, it's not. And the offensive line has surprised because their interior offensive line is actually pretty good. Their tackles aren't great, but Mike Remmers at right tackle has played a little bit better. It's a team that's not an overwhelmingly talented offense, but they do what they do best, and they play a physical brand, and they try to take off a little bit of pressure on Newton to run the ball a lot, use play action to kind of buy him some extra time with that offensive line. So, it's a very interesting team, and I think that it's a team that will continue to do well in the regular season, but I think ultimately, Atlanta can beat them out in that division. I don't see them continuing to win this many games, as their schedule is probably going to get a little bit harder here soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree. I expect the Falcons to eventually overtake them. The Falcons, of course, had a bit of a hiccup last Thursday, but even with that, I think the Falcons are still more talented than the Panthers, are still playing better than the Panthers. What's interesting, though, is those two teams don't meet each other until week 14 in Carolina, and then they meet in Atlanta in week 16. So, we still have a long way to go. And then you mentioned the schedule probably going to get a little bit tougher. Well, they face an Eagles team on Sunday that, won ugly on Monday night, but could still potentially cause problems for this Panthers team. So that makes for an interesting Sunday night game. Then they've got Andrew Luck, assuming he plays that night, and the Colts on a Monday night. And then we mentioned before, the Packers against the Panthers on November 8th. So it is 3 straight home games for the Panthers, but certainly not an easy stretch by any means for this Panthers team. So it's possible that they lose one of the next 3 games and maybe kind of, not so much fall back to earth, but we start to see the Panthers for more what we expect. Grant, I'll admit, obviously, they surprised me a lot. I pretty much left this team for dead when Kelvin Benjamin was injured. I think I pegged them for maybe like a 6-win team, and they've already got 5 wins. So they've obviously proved me wrong there. But like you said, they've played some pretty easy teams. They've beaten the Jaguars, they beat the Bucks, they beat the Saints at home. So, not exactly a murderer's row of teams. But again, you play what your schedule says. You don't have any say in the teams you play. You don't have any control of how good or bad they're going to be. But, looking back, yeah, has it been an easy road? Sure. But, it'll be interesting to see how they do going forward. But, I agree with you. I think Cam Newton has been playing outstanding, and I think certainly he deserves MVP consideration right now, because I think without Cam Newton, there's no way this Panthers team, even with the schedule they've played, I don't think they're 5-0. Without Cam Newton, they don't make that comeback against the Seahawks. And he's doing what he needs to do. He's making the best out of the fact that he is their best rusher, as you mentioned. So, but it'll be fun to watch for sure how they do going forward. So, or did you have anything else to add? Or
no, I mean I don't think so. I mean they do have. I like their defense though.
Yeah.
I will mention that I like Josh Norman a lot. I like their linebacker unit. Pretty good defensive line too. So.
Yeah. In fact, I think Kawan Short was named Defensive Player of the Week for Week 5. So
yeah, it's very impressive.
Week 6, excuse me.
Very impressive.
Yeah.
We'll see, though. I mean, they and Atlanta are going to have a big fun battle here in the second half of the season.
Yeah, it does make for an interesting race, and certainly it is nice to see the NFC South get back to relevancy a little bit. The fact that only 7 divisions won this division last season, and now the Panthers and Falcons, who played off for the division last year, both already have 5 wins, and they have yet to play each other. So certainly it looks like a winning record is going to take this division. I mean, there are still some easy games left for the Panthers too. They still have to play the Titans. They still have another game against the Saints. They close against the Buccaneers, so that's 3 winnable games right there that should get them to 8 wins. And then we've mentioned, we talked about the Falcons last week with Eric Edholm. Their next all their games leading up to their bye week are still winnable. So, it's very possible that double-digit wins, 10, maybe 11, maybe 12, wins this division this year. So it's going to be fun to watch. So let's talk a little bit too about what team we think will be the last undefeated team standing. And you've mentioned yourself, pretty much all these teams have tough games coming up in the next few weeks. So it's probably not too far off till we see the last undefeated team. Just to run through, we'll mention the next 3 games, we'll say, for each team. So the Patriots' next 3 games are the Jets this week at home, the Dolphins at home on a Thursday night, and then home against the Redskins. The Packers, they've got a bye this week, then at Denver, at Carolina, home against Detroit. Bengals are on a bye, then at Pittsburgh versus Cleveland on Thursday night, versus Houston on Monday night, as we mentioned earlier. Denver on a bye. So it makes it interesting that we'll be guaranteed 3 undefeated teams going into Week 8. And because the Broncos and Packers meet on Sunday night, we're guaranteed an undefeated team going into Week 9. Then after the Packers, the Broncos are at Indy and home against Kansas City. And as I just mentioned, the Panthers' next 3 are home against Philly, Indy, and Green Bay. So of those 5 teams, who do you think is going to be the last team standing still undefeated?
Oh, boy, I tell you what, I could give you a different answer every 30 minutes if you were to ask me. Man, that's so tough.
It's tough, yeah.
I think I'll go with Cincinnati. I
think that's kind of how I'm feeling too.
Yeah, like I said, I could hear an argument for all of them. I think Denver probably loses first, either Denver or Carolina.
Yeah.
But
Green Bay will go in and beat Denver that Sunday night, so that eliminates Denver.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that does worry me about Green Bay, though, like I mentioned, is that Green Bay, like I said, has slowed down a little bit the last couple of weeks. So maybe they're going to be a little bit vulnerable this week if they don't start everybody. So, but yeah, I mean, these are some really good teams, man. We're really seeing, three teams that I think are just head and shoulders above the rest.
Yeah, without that, I'll agree with you. I think it's pretty clear right now that New England, Green Bay, and Cincinnati are the top 3 teams. And, even though Denver and Carolina are still undefeated, doesn't necessarily mean they're a top 5 team. I'll still make the argument that Atlanta is better than Carolina. The Jets have certainly been a surprise and are certainly playing well. Pittsburgh's getting better. So it makes it interesting. You have the clear-cut teams, but there's definitely some contenders below them that, when we get late in the season into the playoffs, it's going to make it an interesting tournament to watch. So, with that, I think we will go ahead and start looking at the Week 7 schedule.
All right.
Obviously, at the at the time now of this recording, Week 7 is already underway. I believe I don't have the score in front of me. At last check, I think it was.
It's ugly. Yeah, it's 17-0 right now.
There you go, 17-0. So it is. So it is getting a little. Seattle is starting to pull away a little bit, and apparently, based on my Twitter timeline, San Fran has not looked good.
No.
So
no, not at all.
Well, the old saying, I guess, is coming true. They are who we thought they were.
That's right.
They played us all for full. Well, especially me. They played me for full after Week 1. I learned my lesson. So we'll go ahead and start talking about Sunday's games. Oh, by the way, I did originally pick San Fran as well to potentially pull a bit of an upset, so oops on me. Oh well.
Yep.
Let's talk about the Sunday games. That starts, of course, at 9:30 a.m. That's right, another week of a quadruple header of football. I love these 9:30 a.m. games. This one, of course, is going to be streaming live digitally on Yahoo. So if you don't have a computer and you don't live in Buffalo or Jacksonville, sorry, I guess you're not going to be able to see the game. But otherwise, yeah, it'll be on CBS in the Buffalo and Jacksonville markets. For everyone else, it'll be streamed on Yahoo. It's the Bills taking on the Jaguars. And as we talked last week with Eric, we still want to believe in the Jaguars. We still think they have pieces there. But it does get to a point, and they're talking a little bit about too. I think I saw a tweet from Aaron Nagler, I think, responding to a Jeff Darlington about a piece he wrote. The improvement is there, but eventually you do got to start winning some games too. The fact that Jacksonville is 1-5 isn't exactly promising. But the advantage, or at least one thing that is working in Jacksonville's favor this week, is that both Tyrod Taylor and Sammy Watkins are out for Sunday's game.
Yep.
That said, I think the Bills are still more talented at this point and look better than the Jaguars, so I expect the Bills to go into London and come away with the victory.
I agree with you on all counts, and it's kind of crazy to say that, backup quarterback's going to win against the team, but, Jacksonville's just kind of struggled that much. They're not a bad team, as we've talked about, but they're not really that good enough yet to take advantage of against backups. We saw them lose against the worst backup and Matt Hasselbeck.
Sure.
I think Manuel's pretty similar in terms of, impact. He's not going to do a whole lot great, but I don't think he's going to do a whole lot of bad either. He's just kind of a middling option, but that should be all they need to win this game. So I agree with you.
Then we go to the 1 o'clock games. Tampa Bay will be in Washington to take on the Redskins. Kind of a blag game here, but I'll take the Buccaneers just because I feel the Buccaneers are better right now.
I agree with you. Washington's kind of gotten away from the run game in recent weeks. Tampa Bay coming off of a bye week. Jameis Winston is the better quarterback in the game. Washington's defense isn't that good, and neither is Tampa Bay. So, this may be a little bit of a shootout if Kirk Cousins can keep the ball in the hands of his receivers and not the defenders.
Yeah, really.
But then again, we may see a game with like 6 interceptions total, so I don't know.
Yeah, somebody check Kirk Cousins' vision, or at least make sure he can differentiate colors.
Yeah, definitely.
Although this one's tough because both teams wear a shade of red.
Yeah, so they might get lucky and get a couple of easy
yeah,
picks.
He'll think he's throwing it to the wrong team, and it'll get some kind of lucky bounce, and Pierre Garçon or somebody will catch it. But yeah, this is kind of one of those blah games. The next game's kind of blah as well. Shouldn't be much of a contest. It's the 5-1 Falcons in Tennessee to take on the Titans. Atlanta should have no problem in this one against a struggling Titans team with a banged up Marcus Mariota at quarterback, if Mariota even starts. And if he doesn't, it makes it all the better for the Falcons because Lord knows Zach Mettenberger ain't carrying this team anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, not much analysis here. Just going with the better team.
Yep.
Have to go with Atlanta.
The lone Super Bowl rematch is in Indianapolis. It's the Saints taking on the Colts. And two kind of underachieving teams. But assuming Andrew Luck is good to go for this one, I think I'll take the Colts because I think they're the slightly better team. Saints on the road, they're struggling. They got the win over the Falcons, but that was at home, and they've usually had success at home against the Falcons. Now they got to go back on the road. Could be a tough go for them against the Colts.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those games where I think this is where the Colts may start to kind of find themselves. The Saints are a bad team. They're just a bad team.
They are.
And they've got some small positives to build off of working toward the future, 2016 and beyond. But really this year, I'm surprised that they're 2-4, but they will drop to 0-4 away if my prediction that the Colts win this week comes true. And I don't think it's going to be especially close either. I mean, I know it's in a dome, but if Andrew Luck plays, I think that they win this game fairly comfortably.
The Vikings are in Detroit to take on the Lions, and actually the second meeting already between those two teams. I always find it interesting, too, when division opponents play both of their games against each other so early in the season. I mean, it's only week 7, and these two teams are already finishing up their series against each other, and we'll see that scenario in another division later on as we run through these games. But Lions, obviously, struggling bad. They did get the win last week, but it was at home against a subpar Bears team. So I actually picked the Lions only because I figured, home against a poor team, should be able to get their first win. They are home this week, but they're facing a much better team in their division than the Vikings. I think Teddy and company go into Detroit, come away with the win, and get to 4-2, dropping the Lions to 1-6.
Yeah, I think we're illustrating just how weak of a docket we have this week, because we're going to agree again here. I don't see Detroit picking up this win. I mean, I just think coaching, I think talent, everything is in favor this week of Minnesota Vikings. Mm-hmm. Believe they're coming off of a bye week as well, so that's just going to be a lot to overcome, and Detroit just kind of seems like one of those teams they're just going to implode and just have a terrible season, unfortunately.
Well, it feels like the second half of 2013, I believe it was, under Jim Schwartz, where things just completely crumbled. Just this time, they're not waiting until Thanksgiving to crumble. They've already started the process.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, man. A lot of good Detroit fans out there that I've interacted with on Twitter. Definitely didn't see this type of decline happen.
No,
but
not from a team that made the playoffs last year and should have won a playoff game. But yeah, what a rapid decline under Jim Caldwell.
Yep.
The Steelers heading out to the Midwest to take on the Chiefs. And boy, as we mentioned when talking about the Broncos, boy, have the Chiefs been disappointing. They had that opening week win against the Texans and have not won since. And I will pick that streak to continue. I think the Steelers then again, they do have Landry Jones going at quarterback, but I guess with a week of practice, maybe Mike Tomlin, Todd Haley can do something with Landry Jones. And of course, it's not like Landry Jones has to do it all on his own, Just hand it off to Le'Veon Bell and just let him do his thing. And if you need to just chuck a couple balls to Antonio Brown or Martavis Bryant, whoever, let him do that. So, but I think even with Landry Jones, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Steelers here.
And one thing to consider too is the Steelers' defense has been playing better. I had some angry Steeler fans in my mentions this week because I published in an article that I'm still concerned about their defense, and I think that's fair. I know that they played well against Arizona, but Arizona they moved the ball really well down the field, and then they struggled in the red zone. I'm not ready to buy this team yet. I'm not ready to buy this defense. So I'm going to go with the upset. Why not? I'm going to go with Kansas City, home team, tough environment for a young quarterback, like you mentioned. I'll take the tougher, the lower chance, lower probability, the underdog at home. I will go with Kansas City.
And that's a fair point too. Kansas City, even as bad as a team they are, it's still a tough place to play because those fans are just outstanding. Shout out to Jinx and Sully Football out there if you guys are listening. Hey guys, what's up? That sea of red, that's tough for any opponent. So, there is definitely that potential that Landry Jones in his first NFL start feels overwhelmed playing in Kansas City and, looking at that defense because it's still a pretty good defense. But, so that'll be interesting to watch. And so let's move on. Another AFC North team in action, the Cleveland Browns. They are in St. Louis to take on the Rams in a battle of two fairly poor teams. If you like quarterback play, you're probably going to stay away from this one.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'll take the Rams at home just because, I guess, I don't know, the Browns still aren't that good. This is just a blah matchup. It's not terrible, but it just feels like it's just there. I don't know. This is just one of those, like, here we are games.
Yeah, and here's the one thing that if you want to watch this game, what to look for. Todd Gurley should have a huge game against this terrible defense, okay? If you want to see a big running performance, Todd Gurley should be delivering this week. Danny Shelton and that Browns defense just has not been good this year against the run. So, we'll see if that bears true, but it should. I mean, I'd be pretty shocked if this is not a big game for Todd Gurley. So in saying that, I will also take the St. Louis Rams at home.
By the way, for those who play on DraftKings, Todd Gurley is only 5,000.
Wow. Yeah, you need to pick him up.
that would be pretty good, especially we'll put this in perspective quick. The top running back is Le'Veon Bell. He's at 84, followed by Devontae Freeman at 79. Boy, you're skyrocketing and having an outstanding season when DraftKings prices you more than Adrian Peterson, who's third on this list at 76. So, I know we don't talk fantasy much on here, but you mentioned that. I just figured I'd throw that in. But yeah, only 5,000 this week for Todd Gurley against one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. So, who knows? We'll see. I also have terrible luck on DraftKings, so don't rely heavily on me. I'll pick a lineup that I think is really good, and then just bad, terrible. Anyway, the game that Ian and I broke down a little bit on the Miami pod, naturally. The Dolphins home against the Texans. We talked a little bit about that game over on your show, so if you guys want to check that out, you can. So we'll just kind of quickly break this down. The Dolphins, I think, are the more talented team, and they really woke up under Dan Campbell last week. I was finally happy. Thank God they gave Lamar Miller the ball. Thank God, finally. See what happens when you give a talented running back the ball enough?
It's pretty incredible.
It's amazing what can happen. And I expect that to continue, and I think they beat the Texans this week and get back to 500.
I agree with you. I think Miami does it. And I think I picked them 23-10 or so, and I believe you had them at 24-13 or so.
14, yep.
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, I think we're both in agreement here. Texans, I think it's going to be a good game, but I don't think that that's going to be especially close.
Yeah. An old rivalry that may have fizzled a little bit by the loss of one particular character, but still some storylines for sure. Darrelle Revis returns to New England as the Jets take on the Patriots, and we talked before, you know, we talked off the show, or at least you did, about the fairly strong possibility, or at least better, at least pretty high potential chance that the Jets actually spring the upset here. I'll pick the Patriots to win, but certainly the Jets are not a team to be overlooked anymore at 4-1.
Yeah, I think this might be the game of the week, man. Like I'm really looking forward to this one. Physical smash mouth football, which I'm a big fan of. I like physical players. I like players that aren't afraid to hit you in the face every single play and get right back up when they take it and get knocked on their butt as well. I think this is gonna be a great game. I think the Jets win. To be honest with you,
there you go.
Yeah, let me go for it. Why not? Why not? So I found a stat the other day that I thought was really interesting. The last 11 times or 16 times that the number one defense and the number one offense have played, 11 times the number one defense has won, and that would be the New York Jets. Coming off a bye week, this team is pumped up. I know Ryan Fitzpatrick is very inconsistent. He battles severe inaccuracy at times, but he is also capable of making huge, huge plays. Brandon Marshall is going to be a handful for Malcolm Butler to handle. Chris Ivory is a tremendous running back that doesn't get enough respect. That defensive front, man, they're going to put pressure on Brady, and they have the secondary to help slow him down. And I'm just going to go for it. So I'm going to pick the Jets here.
There you go. And I would not be surprised if the Jets pull the upset either. Like you mentioned, number one defense. Todd Bowles has really done an excellent job with this defense. And it was kind of expected, too, because he's such a good defensive coach. From his time in Miami how well he did. He didn't have the greatest of times in Philadelphia, but, you'll have those hiccups sometimes as a coach. Even Bill Belichick, the quite forgotten time in Cleveland where he was certainly up and down. But, so great job by Todd Bowles getting this Jets team back to one of the top teams right now in the NFL. The 4:05 game on CBS pits the Raiders against the Chargers. I will take the Chargers in this one. There's certainly the chance that they're going to feel angry after missing a huge opportunity against the Packers last week. Phillip Rivers throws for 500 yards, and they still lose the game.
It's crazy.
Who'd have thought that having 503 yards, and he would have needed 3 yards to win the game. He couldn't do it. But I'll go ahead and take the Chargers in this one.
This is going to be a shootout. I think this could be a really fun game to watch. And actually, I think some of these other 4 o'clock games, I guess there's only 2 4 o'clock games. Am I seeing that right?
There are only 2.
Yeah, there's only 2
this week. Yep.
Wow. I think both of these 4 o'clock games have a lot of interest in them. But I think this Raiders and Chargers game, I think this could be fireworks central. Derek Carr, I'm really interested to see. I'm really interested to see if he can come off a bye week, come out, play really well against a pretty poor Chargers defense. They have Jason Verrett. They have Brandon Flowers, who's still okay. Eric Weddle, who's great. Denzel Perriman played better for them than what they had seen out of Donald Butler the last couple of years. So he had a good week 6. But I think the Raiders win this, and I think this is going to be a very exciting game. I think we could see this being in like the high 20s, mid 30s maybe. So maybe let me go with 35-34. Why not?
Okay.
I just think it's going to be a really fun game, even if it's not that high scoring. The over-under is only 46.5, so Vegas clearly disagrees with me. So let's let's go with Vegas on that one. Don't take the over on that because Vegas is always right. But still, though, I still think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
The other 4 o'clock game at 4:25, and people have talked about this too a little bit. How there's usually so few games in the 4 o'clock window. I know there's people who feel like maybe it should be kind of an even split between the 1 o'clock games and the 4 o'clock games, but the other 4 o'clock game on Fox, I mentioned before how the Vikings and Lions meeting for the second time already, the Cowboys and Giants meeting for the second time. The Cowboys, of course, after Tony Romo's clutch drive late in the game, came back to win in week 1. The Giants last week showed that they still have a bit of work to do. But they are facing a Matt Castle-led Cowboys team. It's expected that Matt Castle is going to get the start because Brandon Weeden, as expected, turned out to be pretty bad. He started off okay, but then he kind of face-planted. So now Matt Castle is going to be the guy. The Cowboys are coming off a bye, so Castle's had a little bit of time. I don't know. This one's tough. You know what? I think I'm gonna go ahead and take the Giants at home in this one.
Yeah, I think that's the right choice.
I don't know. Eli's probably gonna be a bit angry. Hopefully the offense gets going, and Matt Castle's just, we don't know what to expect of him in his first start with the Cowboys. Running game is still kind of so-so. Receivers still aren't there, so yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and take the Giants.
Yep, I am with you there.
The Sunday night game, Chip Kelly and the Eagles against Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers.
It's a tough one.
It is.
It's really a tough one because Eagles they played an ugly game last week, but I like that they still won.
Yeah.
You got to win those games. And I think it says a lot about a team to win those games. Not every win during the season or even playoffs or even Super Bowl is going to be a pretty win. They're not all going to be blowouts. Not everything's going to go right. Mm-hmm. And we just have to realize that. I mean, we really do. It's okay to win when players play poorly. And another thing with the Eagles and for people listening, I have no vested interest in the Eagles. I mean, I'm not an Eagles fan. I like Chip Kelly, but quite frankly, growing up, I didn't like the Eagles. I just didn't like them for whatever reason. But when I look at this team, though, I feel like I need to defend them a little bit, and I feel like Chip Kelly's worth defending because people just like to take shots at him for some reason. I am a fan of his, but still, let's look at the moves that he made over the offseason. The only player that he got rid of that's playing any type of decent level right now is Evan Mathis. And Mathis still hasn't been great. He's just been okay. He's been an okay player.
Yeah.
So would that have been an upgrade for the Eagles? Yeah, probably. But it's not one of those losses that makes you, stomp and curse and throw a hissy fit about. The move to trade LaShawn McCoy, guess what? LaShawn McCoy hasn't been any good for the Bills. The move to trade for Sam Bradford and trade away Nick Foles has probably been as good as Sam Bradford, but he hasn't been especially good. And I would still say that Sam Bradford has a lot of time left this season to get back to where he was in 2013 before he was injured. Yeah. And if he never gets there, you paid a little bit of a heavy price to get him, but it's still not like you gave up a franchise quarterback. Nick Foles isn't good. I mean, I'm pretty confident in that. But overall, did he overpay Byron Maxwell? Sure.
Yeah.
That's a given. I mean, we understood that at the time, but they had a lot of money to spend. They still have a lot of money to spend, and they were trying to upgrade a secondary. If they get a number one cornerback at some point, that's going to be a signing that looks a lot better. He's not a number one cornerback, but they paid market price for him, and that's what happens in free agency. You're going to overpay people in free agency. It's just how it is. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I know it's a tough pill to swallow this year because you don't have that number one cornerback on the roster right now. But we knew that entering the season. If you follow Coverage Productivity on Twitter, a series that I do on cornerback play. I had told you that last year, that he was going to struggle in Philly. So, it's just a matter of he's just not that guy yet. And maybe he'll never become him, but he's still a more talented player than what they were trotting out last year. I'd still rather have Byron Maxwell than Kerry Williams or Bradley Fletcher. Yeah, those guys were just abominations.
That was terrible. Yeah, it was so bad. And I may get called a homer for this or whatnot, but I'll take the Eagles in this one. I think one of the matchups that favors them is their defensive line against Carolina's offensive line. Look, we talked about the Panthers' O-line earlier. It's been okay, not great, but the Philly D-line is still playing outstanding. Benny Logan has turned into one of the better nose tackles in the NFL. Fletcher Cox is still a dominant defensive tackle. So I think the Eagles might be able to get to Cam Newton a little bit, and I think they should be able to put up points on offense. I think they could potentially come away with the victory here.
Oh, boy. I don't know, man. I think the Cardinals win this one. And I think they win it pretty easily. They've lost last week, obviously. The Ravens, they stay tough in these games. Their defense.
On to the Monday game. Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Sorry, did I jump ahead on
a little bit? Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I kind of lost my train of thought there. I'm going to pick the Eagles to win here against the Panthers. Primetime football. The Eagles, like you mentioned, I think this is a team that they can win ugly games. We just saw that. We've seen them have a good game now. First of 3 primetime games.
Yep.
The Panthers, first time in primetime this year. It looks like it should be good weather. And I think that plays into the Eagles' favor a little bit more than the Panthers' favor, because the Panthers are going to try to slog it out anyways. I don't know. I think these are 2 very similar teams. And Newton's been playing great, sure. I completely agree with that. But again, he hasn't played a team or a defense like Philadelphia's. I know Seattle's is really good, but Seattle hasn't been Seattle this year. Fletcher Cox, like you mentioned, I'm glad you mentioned him because he is just fantastic. He's one of my favorite players in the league too. So I think this is a really close game either way. Even if I end up being wrong, I think the Panthers, if they win this, it's going to be a pretty close one. But I'll take the Eagles. I'll take the Eagles 21-20.
And then, you still got me?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so go ahead. You were talking about the Cardinals game, so you picked Arizona to win. Yeah,
I'm going to go Arizona to win this. Ravens have played tough as far as staying close, trying to stay close. But that's just a team that just doesn't look like they've got the horses to really run with any decent teams.
Yeah, Baltimore's been playing bad. I'll definitely take Arizona to win here in prime time. And with that, I think that wraps it up for another week of the Grid Grads. Good show, I think, Ian.
Yeah, I think so, man. That's unfortunately not an overly strong football weekend either on Saturday or Sunday. But you know what, though? Sometimes you end up getting some great games out of that because sometimes bad teams play good games.
That's right. So with that, we hope you enjoy the games. Thank you so much for listening, as always. For Ian Wharton, I'm Bill Rossetti. Thanks so much for listening and caring and enjoying, and we will see you next week right here on GG. Goodbye, my friends.